Hi students, this is a video to teach you the strategy that we're going to use as a class to learn vocabulary terms. The pros of doing it in this way are that it is a research proven strategy, so it has been shown to help people create really strong memories of a new word and its definition. And we're going to be working on it as a group, as a class. So you will not have to use this strategy to create memory tools for every single vocabulary term. We will actually break it up as a class and do it all together. Of course, you're welcome to adjust anything if it doesn't work well for you, but hopefully this way we get a lot done in not a lot of time and with not a whole lot of effort. So let's get started. So this method is called the lynx method. It's kind of funny because it is a strategy for learning new vocab words using memory enhancement techniques. And the strategy is awesome. I personally think the acronym is not so awesome because I can never remember what the different letters of the acronym represent. But the idea, as you will see in a moment, is that we're using a reminding word that reminds us of what the new word is. And then we connect those two things together using a story and a picture. So if that doesn't make sense, it will in just a second. Let's take a look at what it looks like in an example. So as an example, it usually is used for making flashcards. In our case, we're going to make it in a slide deck. So we'll have 2 slides per vocabulary word. And when you log in, the slides will sort of be arranged like this. The first thing that you'll see is that your slide will have the new vocabulary term on the first side. And in this case, the example we're going to look at is hypothesis. So if you did not already know, a hypothesis is an educated guess based on observations. So on the opposite side, just like you would in a regular flashcards, you're going to have the actual definition that we'll want you to know. Here's where the technique really comes in and where things really get different. So you're going to create a reminding word, and typically reminding word will sound like your new vocabulary term, or sometimes it can be something that just really strongly is associated with that term. It has to be something that you already know, so it can't be using a word that you're also unfamiliar with. But in this case, I decided to do a phrase that sounds just like the word. So the phrase is, "Hi, Pa, this is," and so it's a good phrase, at least for me, because if you read the word hypothesis, it actually sounds like, "Hi, Pa, this is." So I will definitely be able to remember that phrase if I see the word hypothesis and I think, "Oh, what was my reminding word?" I'm pretty sure that I'll remember this phrase. So you want something that would be really easily triggered by seeing that word. In the next step, you create a linking story. The story should be super simple, super short. It shouldn't have a lot of text. And in your linking story, you're connecting the definition of the word, so the actual meaning that you're trying to remember, with your phrase that comes to mind. So the reason we're doing this is because we're taking a phrase that is really easy to understand, that we already know. So we're using background knowledge. "Hi, Pa, this is," like, there's nothing new in that phrase. There's nothing unfamiliar to me. And I'm going to link that really familiar thing with the definition that I'm looking for. So when I see this unfamiliar word, hypothesis, I'm going to use this linking story to say, like, okay, hypothesis. I know my phrase is, "Hi, Pa, this is," and I know my story is, "Hi, Pa, guess who this is." And so by having that triggered, you're going to say, "All right, it's a guess. It's a guess." And I want to make it even more clear in the next step by adding a linking picture. So what I did was I just literally went online and I found a picture of an elephant under a blanket, and I found a picture of a grandpa. I literally put grandpa, but he doesn't really look too grandpa-ly, but he'll do. And I had him, I put grandpa detective. And so I have a representation of somebody who's trying to use clues to make a guess. And so this grandpa is going to guess, like, "Oh, yes, I see a trunk, so I'm guessing that's an elephant." So this is the process of making these does take some time. It's a really powerful technique because as you're taking this time to actually make this and you're creating this really vivid imagery, it's going to really solidly stick in your brain. So when we look at the completed vocabulary, the lynx vocabulary strategy, you will see in your slide deck the actual term and the reminding word, or in this case, the phrase. And you can self-test by saying, okay, my word is hypothesis, right? My reminding phrase is hypothesis. And then you take a moment and say, all right, what was my picture? What was my story? For different people, things will come to you in different ways. So I prefer, in this particular case, the visual of the grandpa looking at the elephant is what really sticks out to me. And then I remember, oh right, it's hypo, guess who this is? And so I'm thinking to myself, hypothesis, it's an educated guess based on observations. And then you check. So you go to the following slide, then you say, yes, I got it. This worked for me. Sometimes it won't be perfect for you. You can either choose to go back through and say, okay, let me really study this second side again. Let me spend some time with it. Or maybe you make a copy of the slide deck for yourself to put in your own Google Drive, and you say, this wasn't the best strategy for me. I'm going to go ahead and make a copy of this and change some of these vocab words. Also, there may be times when you already knew the definition of the word. There's no point in spending time trying to memorize this imagery. This lynx strategy is only for new vocabulary words that you don't already know the meaning for. And so when you go in to make your slides, to make your lynx strategy, what you're going to see is a big deck of vocab words for the unit, or occasionally for a part of a unit. And you will see, we will already provide the new vocabulary term, the short and sweet definition that we want you to remember. And then your job will be to create a reminding word that follows the guidelines that I mentioned and that we're going to go over again in a second. You're going to create a linking story, short, sweet, that connects the reminding word to the definition that you're trying to remember. And then you're going to put together a linking picture. Let's just talk through what an effective reminding word would be. So it should sound similar to the new word, and it's used to remind you of the meaning of the new word. And we make that connection between the reminding word and the meaning of the new word in our story, right? So when you're coming up with an effective reminding word, it should be something that you can think, oh, okay, yeah, I can make it into a story like this, and I can make it connect to the meaning like this. In my case, when I chose the hypothesis, I was already thinking about, okay, yeah, because that sounds like, I think I could turn that into somebody trying to guess something. So that you need to be thinking ahead to your story as well. It should always sound like part of or all of the new word. Sometimes there are words that sound the same that are spelled differently. Those are perfect options as long as you can create a good story to link them. It needs to be a real word. So if you make up something that's like a nonsense word or isn't a real word, that has not been shown to be as effective. And in fact, that's why nonsense word is over here in the never category. Don't use nonsense words. The research shows that that's not the most effective thing. It should have a meaning that you already know. And I would even push you further to say like something that you should be really familiar with, like really comfortable. It shouldn't be something that you're like, hypothermia, what does that mean again? That it's too hot or too cold? Because you could have said like, oh, hypothesis, I'm going to use hypothermia. But unless you're really, really confident and regularly use and understand the word hypothermia, it's not a great choice because it's not necessarily going to be like an easy thing for you to create a connection between those words. That said, maybe for you it is a perfect choice. So by all means, just do it, knowing that you want to choose something that is really easy for you to understand and remember. And then it should help you remember what the new word means. It can also sound like the beginning of the new word. So if you really can't think of a word that sounds like part or all of it, maybe it's just something that it sounds like the beginning or like the end or that rhymes. And so sometimes we can't find the perfect word, but occasionally you can. So just make sure that you're on the lookout for the best option. And then a linking story should always include the reminding word. So in my story, for example, the reminding word was hypothesis, and then my story has to include that in there. So I just added guess who. So hypo, guess who this is. That's okay to do. You can also just use that reminding word in the story, but it has to be in the story. And then you want to make sure that you're actually connecting that reminding word, that really familiar word that is sort of triggered when you see that new word, the vocabulary term, and connect the reminding word to the definition. I know a lot of this is when I first learned this strategy, I was like, what? This is so complicated. I assure you, I have used this strategy throughout the years. I think I learned it like, I don't know, 8 years ago or something. And I have used it on many occasions to learn lots of vocab words really quickly. It does take practice, and we're going to do that in class. So if you have questions or if you're confused, rewatch this video first, ask one of your fellow classmates next, reach out to your teacher next. We are here to help you. And then your effective linking story should be short and simple, very short and simple. It shouldn't be hard to remember your story because we're trying to create really easy connections that speed up the process of learning our new definition.